Mark Buttigieg here. I'm a member of the New South Wales Parliament. I'm here today for the very first edition of my podcast called On the Workers' Side. And we've got a very special guest with us here, Gerard Hayes, who's the General Secretary of the Health Services Union in New South Wales. G'day, Gerard.
G'day, Mark.
How are you?
Good, mate. Good.
That's good. Mate, you've had an interesting sort of, I suppose, 13 years at the helm of the union. I just want to get a feel for what you thought as, a young man, an 18-year-old. Did you ever sort of foresee going into a role like that, or did you intend to stay a healthcare professional or eventually go into politics? Like, where was your head at as a young man?
Look, I think as an 18-year-old, I'm probably like a lot of other 18-year-olds. I had no idea what I wanted to do and sort of bounced around from a few different jobs. Worked for the PSA for a little while and then went and joined the ambulance service, which I really enjoyed and stayed there for about 15 years. But I just think it's so difficult for young people to really know what steps in life they want to take at a young age, particularly on the back of doing the HSU and a whole range of other matters. So a lot of pressure, I think, gets put on people to know where you want to be. And sometimes life just actually shows you the direction.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I had a similar experience as well, sort of fell into the electrical trade and then things went from there. But I suppose in hindsight, it's quite illustrative that someone would come from the tools up, as we would call it, like you've been on the front line. How has that helped you in terms of being in this role as head of the union, and how important do you think it is?
Look, it's a role that I never sort of saw myself in, to be honest with you. But the reality is, at the end of the day, it's been very helpful due to the fact that everything that our members undertake, I've done. I understand shift work, I understand on-call, I understand not being able to make ends meet. Our members go through that on a daily basis, and it's very, engaging to understand what you're talking about, not just being able to say, I understand, but I don't really know. And I think that gives us a high level of confidence.
Yeah, and obviously as a union leader, you haven't always got the benefit of that background. Some people come up through different pathways, but you feel as though it's been an overwhelming positive because obviously the respect you get from members, but also that knowledge where you have a day-to-day working knowledge of what's going on the ground.
Look, the reality is I am one of the members. I'm not above them. Yeah. I'm not different to them. I am one of them. And I think that that way we can actually work together really well, and people sort of understand the way I think. I understand the way they think. So it just really changes a lot of, I guess, hierarchical type approaches that may happen in other organisations, or people leading who really don't have an in-depth knowledge of what or who they are leading.
And tell me, when you walked into the role, I think it was 2012, is that right?
Yeah.
What did you find? Like, it must have been a head spinner.
It was a union that was insolvent. We had lost 6,000 members in 6 months. We had $23 million debt, and we had a $200,000 overdraft to pay wages. So effectively no one could leave because they couldn't be paid out. So it was a union that was clearly on its knees, and it had only one way to go. Well, two ways to go. It could have collapsed totally, or it could have started to rebuild. And over the past 12, 13 years now, we've gone from 28,992 members to 54,069 members as of yesterday. And these are important things that build confidence.
So pretty much double the membership in a space of 13 years.
Yep.
And tell me, when you came in, what was your overwhelming memory of where your head was at in terms of what do I need to do to grab this by the throat and turn it around?
It would have been, I was thinking at that point in time, it'd be nice just to run a union, but there were too many other things to be able to do at the same time.
Yeah.
So you literally did have to be able to walk and chew gum. So there was a range of different investigations, post-administration. A Royal Commission was looming pretty quickly on us. We had, basically trying to make ends meet with very little growth, if any, and then starting to build confidence. And on a daily basis, there was just one negative media hit after the next, and that just never stopped. Well, it didn't stop for at least 3 years, and we took a position at the outset that every media inquiry we would answer, no matter what it was, good, bad or indifferent. And bit by bit, I always believed that our approach would start to change the narrative and our outcomes would change the narrative. And bit by bit, that has occurred. And so now we're moving in a good direction collectively with the membership. And I think that's got a big future.
So you've come in and pretty much 3 years of crisis management, dealing with things hitting you left, right, and centre. What was your position before your ascension to secretary?
I was a divisional secretary with the union. So,
Okay, so you had some experience, but what was it like in terms of stepping up to that next level, particularly in a union in crisis? Was it the sort of a did you sort of hit your straps pretty early, or was it a bit of a steep learning curve? Or
oh, look, it was definitely a steep learning curve. So getting into the administration and an administration with virtually no money, having to make decisions in relation. And one of the important decisions was to ask the staff to take a 20% pay cut. It was really a matter that, we had to cut staff or cut wages. And, great credit to the staff that were on at that point in time that they did see that there was a collective good here and they knew exactly the financial situation that was in. And we did be able to work through that, and those steps were very important in the early days.
yeah, because this is not a normal transition, is it, for a union secretary? Normally, you'd come up through the ranks as an official assistant secretary and take over a fairly stable operation, but you had to kind of step up and deal with a terminal patient, literally.
Certainly it wasn't a matter of putting band-aids on. It was to a degree at one point in time was under life support, and there was a lot of people who were very keen to see the union fail.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, we lost 6,000 members. We could have lost 28,000 members. Members hung on, not for any individuals or anybody else. That's because they believed in the union and they believed in union. Yeah. And so those people needed to be respected and rewarded. And so people worked very hard to ensure that their support and commitment has been respected in the longer term.
I suppose it was always a fairly big union compared to other unions, but as you say, you lost 6,000, could have lost more, but not only have you then stabilised it, but double the it's unheard of, isn't it, in modern day unions?
It's certainly growth is developed by actually commitment and outcome. So first step we undertook was to move our staff into divisions, and they're administrative divisions. And so they would be looking after aged care and disabilities, or paramedics and ambulance health, whether it's public health or private health. But instead of being a jack of all trades and master of none, our organisers and our industrial people became specialists in those particular industries. So we got to know them even better than before, and the outcomes started to flow. But it's also important to note that we worked with all levels of government. For the first, up until 2.5 years ago, we had nothing but Liberal governments. And initially, there were some very difficult times. As time went on, we started to develop good outcomes because we're straight shooters. We will fight hard, but we won't pull things out from under the carpet. And I think there's a level of respect that comes from that, irrespective of what side of politics you're on. But we will do what we need to do to get the outcome. But every outcome we get is evidence-based. So we spend a lot of money and effort in terms of our internal research. That gives us a great opportunity to get people to understand the sensibility of what we're saying. So even recently, we're talking about award reform. We're talking about productivity. We're talking about efficiency. We're talking about opening up awards. We're the only union doing that because we're not scared to actually see what we can do to develop into the future, as opposed to having a rearguard action and taking small steps forward. We want to take big steps forward.
Fast forward to the election of our government, the Minns government, 2023. Obviously, you've got this predisposed idea that Labor governments are always more union friendly. To what extent has that changed your strategy, and to what extent is that a real thing?
Look, it doesn't change. The strategy is always that we do our homework, we get the evidence, we put forward the case, and all going well, we move forward, or if we don't, we have to undertake whatever action that we need to undertake. And I respect all governments. They've got their position, they've got budgets to work with. We promote a position because we believe that is absolutely required. It's not a try-on. But I'd also be one of the, I guess, very few union secretaries who has been around with previous Labor governments. And, they're not a walk in the park. And I've said before, it's like, family at Christmas time. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. And the reality is that's how it plays out. They've got a job to do. I'm not here for mates' rates. I don't want people just to look after us. I think that's disrespectful. I think if we've got something that we deserve to win, we should deserve to win it and fight for it. And the last thing I want from any government is here, we'll take care of you, because that potentially gets you in a position that you owe people, and we don't want that. We never have wanted it. And if our case is strong, if our membership is strong, if the leadership is strong, we should do pretty well. But the last thing I ever want is someone to look after us.
So outcomes-based logic based on members' benefit, and then the gravity of that integrity flows through to whoever's in power. That's pretty much a philosophy.
That's exactly what it's all about. And at the end of the day, we look at paramedics now. And I can say that the task force that Perrottet set up and Hazard set up, that has led to Chris and Ryan being able to continue on in a different way that has actually even doubled down on what was already moving in a direction. The outcome that we've seen for the paramedics 2 years ago has never been achieved before.
No.
And that was just absolutely quite remarkable. And the government, this is the Minns government who delivered that.
Yes.
And Chris and I had some pretty robust periods at point in time. But
I remember.
Yeah, but hand on heart, he delivered a service for the community that will go into the future, and we'll keep building upon that. So when we're talking about paramedics now, soon we'll be talking about community-based paramedics who are being able to move so differently and so broadly into the community to not only sort of deliver the care that is required, but also keep people out of hospitals. Already we're seeing now paramedics being able to attend the workplace, attend your home, attend roadside accidents, and not necessarily have to transport people to hospital. They can actually refer them elsewhere, and that takes off pressure. But it's also the way we're moving forward in terms of health into the future is not like the 1970s and 1980s. The 2025 and going forward will be totally different. The scope of practice that not only paramedics have, but a range of other allied health professionals have now is totally different to where it was 20, 30 years ago. And we're starting to embrace that. And great credit to Chris and to Ryan that they're embracing that and they're sort of investing in it.
Yeah. Tell me, Gerard, I'll just take you back to this political frame again. What are your thoughts on affiliation with the Labor Party? The HSU is affiliated to the party. Some unions are not. I just want to get your perspective of from a union leader's point of view, the benefit of it, how it should be utilised.
Yeah, so I won't tell people how to suck eggs, but you look at a nurse is a nurse, a fire is a fire, a cop's a cop, a teacher's a teacher. I've got over 300 different classifications in our union and 4 to 5 different divisions. How do I get focus on those people? The way we deal with it is by being a major affiliate to the ALP, that we can, on the floor of conference, be able to prosecute our concerns, whether you're a cleaner, whether you're a paramedic, or an allied health professional, or an aged care worker. And we look at the outcomes to that. Aged care workers have received a 29% increase. Paramedics have received a 28% increase. Allied health award reform at the moment we're going through, never been done before. So these are things, and very importantly, the Special Commission of Inquiry, which everybody said can't be done, has been done.
Yeah.
And that's coming, and a lot of outcomes will come from that. It's just so important to get to where that health dollar is being spent and where it can be being spent. So all these things people would say never could happen. And one more important thing too is particularly with the Minns government, who committed to 100% salary packaging for our members.
Yes.
Their own personal tax savings, which is just outstanding. It's taken 20 years to get there. That means for a cleaner and other people, probably an extra 1.5%, and potentially 2%. And it's ongoing. So all these things, I've got no doubt, came because not only of affiliation, but how we utilise affiliation.
Yes.
And
it's one thing to be affiliated, isn't it? It's another thing to know how to use it effectively. And I think there'd be few people who wouldn't sort of say that you've been exemplary in utilising that affiliation.
No, look, I probably make more enemies than friends, but the reality is that the only friends I know are within my membership. But I am not going to try it on with people. I've been critical of different groups because of the way things have been done. Doesn't make me right and them wrong, but I'm not going to sit back and just accept what I just don't think is right. And we'll find a way to get that through. But again, I'll go back to the point.
Yep.
Everything we do is evidence-based. It is not a free-for-all. It's not a try-on. It's very hard to argue that what we're saying isn't right.
Just on this business about unions in general, because again, you've been one of the unions who will buck the trend. We hear, particularly from conservative quarters, a lot of the time criticism of union membership declining. What's your view on the broader union movement and the future? Because a lot of people try and use that to decry the relevance of no longer relevant unions. What for? No one's in a union. What's your view on all of that?
Look, unions have got to change as not only the economy's changing, but also as different areas of the population are changing. You can't do business like you did in the 1980s, 1970s. Younger people coming on board have different views on a range of different things. So you have to be contemporary. And I think that's one thing that we've been able to do. We've been able to hold the traditional approach, how we deal with matters, but also we can look at things in a fresh view that is looking at 2025 and beyond, not what got us to 2025. And I think that is really important. Other organisations have, different competing interests as well. So we are in a growth area where health and aged care are growing areas, and we have people. Many of our organisers are reflective of the membership that they're supporting. So we, as much as possible, develop our staff from our membership. So people understand the language, they understand the culture, and they can actually work with people far more easily.
And this modern unionism, this kind of relating to what young people in particular are thinking in a contemporary way, how much did the crisis that forged your leadership and your thinking, how much was that forged in that period? Was that part of like a blessing in disguise, if you like?
No, absolutely. When you're on your knees, there's nowhere else to go. And we made a very clear decision at the outset: for every dollar that gets spent, we want a 10% return. And whether it's staff we're spending money on, whether it's a campaign we're spending money on, whether it's going to be an industrial matter we're spending money on, we have to focus on the dollars. And the old saying of, look after the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. And that's effectively what we did. We looked at any level of waste, any level of expenditure that wasn't required, and made sure that every dollar that was spent had an investment tag to it, which then would go directly into the membership. So going from 49 staff to 130 staff didn't come because, we just could do that. Now, there's a budget there of probably about $15.5 million in its own right, and a budget that will increase as CPI and other matters increase. So it's something that is really important and very much we focus on every day. So as we run a union, we run it with the greatest respect to the money that makes us or gives us the opportunity to spend and invest.
And how important do you think it is for the grassroots membership of the union to be involved in the life of the union for it to be a viable proposition? Like, is that an essential ingredient, or can you run it top down, to varying degrees of...
Well, you can, but I don't know if you get much enjoyment. I wouldn't get much enjoyment out of that. I find the best part of my role is actually being in amongst the membership, whether it's going to be an industrial dispute or whether it's going to visit someone at Broken Hill or Wagga or RPA or Prince of Wales. So being part of the membership is just so important. And I think if you want to run it top down, well, it just becomes more bureaucratic than actually inclusive. And as we say, like we're a member-driven organisation. I've got some pretty good ideas, and a range of other people have got pretty good ideas, but some of the best ideas we have come from the membership. And if I can put it this way, our organisation runs on 4 pillars. And so one's financial, 2 is industrial, 3 is political, and 4 is social. And our social pillar is the one that consistently builds all the time. We've got relationships with drug and alcohol rehabilitation areas, with domestic violence shelters. We look after our members with ambulance. When they can't pay for an ambulance, we can take care of that. That part of the organisation is building, so we get to become not only industrially aligned and associated, or politically aligned and associated, we actually get socially aligned and associated. So the more we can do on those 4 pillars is makes the place a lot stronger and a lot more cohesive.
Part of that social pillar, presumably, is a union member, a HSU member, feeling like they're essentially part of a bigger family. In other words, if I get into trouble, it's not just, I'm just not paying my fees for an insurance policy. I'm part of a community who looks after me, like we care about each other. That's
right. And when I first came in, I said, I don't want to be measured on just what I'm required to do. I want to be measured on what I'm not required to do. And I think that takes you a step further as to where we go to. And I think as we go into the future, we're looking at a range of things. We're looking at an ambulance cover that will cover all our members' families, not only just our members. We're looking at employing our own dentists. So HSU members will ultimately get free dental care. These things that people can't afford. Physiotherapy, we want to look at including that in your membership. But we would employ our own people, so we're not making a profit of some other organisation, and we build along those lines. So not only, we want to be able to look after wages, conditions, we want to be able to look after health and expenditure should you need it.
Yeah, so it moves away from the general traditionalist model of what you conceive of a union, that is, as you say, wages and conditions, to a whole of life. Like, I'm part of an organisation here who is actually embedded in my day-to-day life and makes it better. That's why I'm a member. It's not a transactional.
No. And that's exactly right. And we can see wages and conditions, they're moving now, and they hadn't moved for 12 years. Effectively everyone was making comparisons between Victoria, Queensland and New South Wales. If we had anyone working near a border, you'd be sweating bullets, because it was easy to jump the border and probably get about a 15 to 20% pay increase. That has been corrected as we speak with the government now, and Chris and Ryan have done good work in relation to that. So it's how do we make people feel as though there is more to it than just a transactional relationship? And I think if we can get past a transactional relationship, then people believe that there is something in this that is actually going to be of great value to me, because that people aren't doing it because they have to. They're doing it because they want to.
So just to wind up, mate, I mean, it's an exemplary story in a very short period of time. 13 years, took a union from being in administration, dysfunctional, with a membership hovering around, what was it, low 20s, up to almost high 50s. What do you think? Do you think that's replicable across the union movement, in terms of, because as a Labor people, Labor union, Labor movement people, we obviously want to see the concept of unionism spread. What do you think the future is? Where should we be going?
Look, I think it's a matter now that we have to understand the struggles that our members have, and we all know that members aren't paid enough. We know that their conditions can be better, but what are other struggles? So we really do understand our membership, and cost of living now, you're looking at mortgages and rents, which are pretty much nearly the same in some respects. How do younger people get ahead? And it's just not having a dialogue. It's actually doing something about it, doing something that is you can clearly see it's a tangible issue, and we can actually take steps in the direction, as opposed to sort of making motherhood statements and that. Every person now working incredibly hard has got to find a way to believe that things can change.
So a classic example of that might be, for example, I know you've been instrumental in this, is essential worker housing.
Absolutely, and I think that is incredibly important. And when I say essential worker housing, I do not want to get into the elitism of professions and so forth. No one can tell me that a cleaner is not essential. No one can tell me that a paramedic is not essential. No one can tell me that the garbo who's picking up your garbage every day is not essential. We're a community, so we can't have career elitism. We have to function as a community and work as a community. So otherwise, where do we go? And what really worries me at the moment and what worries me about the future, I can see over and over again, no matter what it is well, the points that we are different about as the points that include us. And this is a real worry for me in society at the moment. How can we be different? How can I fight against you because you're left or right? How can I fight with you because you don't believe in this and I do believe in that? Like, when does it stop? And I have seen, I think over the past 20 years, more and more, it's about what divides us, not what unites us. And I think this is a very dangerous thing. Unless we get a grip on this soon, a community does not live or function in silos. It functions together. And that's the only way we can move together. So, put the petty nonsense beside us and look towards what actually is going to unite us.
So we might just finish on that point because I think it's really interesting. But this this point you make about a cleaner, a garbo, a frontline health worker being just as important, if not more important. I mean, this sort of grotesque thing where you get CEOs being paid $20-30 million in terms of the value they add to society compared to someone who's on the front line cleaning hospitals or, as you say, picking up the garbage or fixing you up on the street, a la a paramedic. Do you think that we're slowly beginning to realise that those sort of grotesque inequities need to be turned around?
Oh, absolutely. Like, you just look at the bigger picture. Some of the tech giants and all these people, they couldn't spend the money that they've got in 10 lifetimes. No. Like, it just becomes monopoly money. The level of the delivery for the poorest in the world, let alone the poorest in your country, just disappears. And this isn't just a mad socialist idea. Let's be fair dinkum about this stuff. I've got no problem with people doing well and making a good life for themselves, but when you gluttonize yourself so much that you can't even consume what's in front of you, and you don't think there's an alternative to that, that seems to be a real mental health issue to me.
And the value too. It's not just the money, it's the value, like the way society values different occupations in terms of status. With that whole way of thinking needs to be turned around. I guess this is where unions can come in and help, right?
Well, I think it's really important. I think it's important for unions to be really sort of thorough and genuine, as opposed to being political as well. The one thing that drives me, and one thing was very helpful for me, as a paramedic for 15 years, I dealt with everybody in society, from people who had no money to people who are multi-millionaires. And they're all exactly the same. They die all the same way. They survive all the same way.
They need food, water.
That's exactly it. And generally, their response at that point in time, when you take all the layers away, is exactly the same. And I think this is something that we need to understand. But, it's up to us. It's up to our younger people. It's up to our older people. But if we want to keep fighting with each other and dividing each other, I've got a real concern about where we're going to.
Thanks, Gerard. It's been a fascinating interview. Really appreciate the insights. Congratulations on stellar victories that the union's made, not just over the last few years, but over the whole 13 years. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, mate. Good on you, mate. Thank you.